Welcome to our channel. Every 12 hours, we will bring to you a new synthetic tale read to you by AI. Each story filled with twists and turns, excitement, and adventure. Whether you're in the mood for a heartwarming romance, a spine tingling thriller, or a magical fantasy, we've got you covered. So sit back, relax, and let us transport you to a world of endless possibilities. Now let's begin.
The fall of civilization. It had been a year since the virus first hit, and the world was never the same. People were turning into mindless, flesh-eating monsters, and no one knew how to stop. The virus was spreading fast, and it was only a matter of time before it reached pandemic proportions. At first, the authorities tried to downplay the situation, but as more and more cases popped up, it became clear that something was seriously wrong. Panic set in as people began hoarding supplies and locking themselves inside their homes. It wasn't long before the government declared a state of emergency and imposed a curfew. A small group of scientists was tasked with finding a cure for the virus, but their efforts were in vain. The virus seemed to be mutating at an alarming rate, and they couldn't keep up. Meanwhile, the number of infected people was growing by the day, and they were spreading the virus to others. The streets were empty and silent, except for the occasional sound of footsteps or a door slamming shut. The few people who dared to venture outside were armed to the teeth, ready to defend themselves against the flesh-eating monsters. But even the best weapons couldn't protect them from the virus, which was more contagious than the common cold. One of the few survivors was a young woman named Sarah. She had managed to lock herself inside her apartment and had enough food and water to last for a few months. But she knew she couldn't stay there forever. She was running low on supplies, and she needed to find more if she was going to survive. Sarah decided to venture out into the world and search for other survivors. She was scared, but she was also determined. She had heard rumors of a safe haven where people were protected from the virus, and she was determined to find it. She stepped out into the street, her heart pounding in her chest. The sun was shining down on the city, but it was a bleak and desolate place. Abandoned cars littered the road, and the buildings were boarded up and covered in graffiti. As Sarah walked down the street, she heard a noise in the distance. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She cautiously approached the source of the noise, her hand tightened around her gun. As she rounded the corner, she saw a group of infected people shuffling down the street, their eyes glassy and their faces contorted with hunger. They saw Sarah and began to run towards her, their arms reaching out. Sarah turned and ran, her heart pounding in her chest. She ran as fast as she could, dodging the infected people as they stumbled and fell in their attempts to catch her. She didn't stop running until she was back in the safety of her apartment, her chest heaving with exertion. For the next few days, Sarah stayed holed up in her apartment, too scared to venture out again. But she knew she couldn't stay there forever. She needed to find other survivors, and she needed to find a cure for the virus. So she gathered her courage and stepped out into the world once more. This time, she was better prepared. She had a map of the city and a plan. She was going to find the safe haven and help find a cure for the virus. Sarah walked for days, her feet sore and her spirits low. But she didn't give up. She was determined to find the safe haven and save the world from the virus. And then, just when she thought she couldn't go on any longer, she saw a glimmer of hope in the distance. A group of people were huddled together, their faces turned towards her in hope. Sarah ran towards the group of people, her heart filled with hope. She finally found other survivors, and she was determined to help them find a cure for the virus. As she approached, She noticed that the group was armed with weapons and were guarding a large building. When she reached the group, she was greeted by a man who introduced himself as the leader of the community. He welcomed her and offered to show her around. Sarah was overjoyed and thanked the man for his kindness. As she explored the building, she realized that the community was much more advanced than she thought. They had all the supplies they needed, and they were working on finding a cure for the virus. Sarah was amazed at how well organized the community was and how much hope they had. However, as she spent more time with the community, she started to notice that something was off. The people were always on edge, and they seemed to be afraid of something. Sarah asked the leader about it, but he told her that it was nothing to worry about and that everything was under control. One day, Sarah was exploring the building when she stumbled upon a secret room. Inside, she found a group of scientists experimenting on infected people, trying to find a cure for the virus. But as she watched, she realized that the experiments were cruel and inhumane. The infected people were being treated like lab rats, and they were suffering terribly. Sarah was horrified by what she saw and confronted the leader about it. But he brushed her off and told her that the experiments were necessary for the survival of the community. He also told her that she was lucky to have found the safe haven and that she should be grateful. But Sarah couldn't ignore what she saw. She knew she had to do something to stop the experiments and save the infected people. So she gathered a few like-minded individuals from the community, and together, they staged a revolt. They freed the infected people and helped them escape the building. But the leader and his followers were determined to stop them, and a fierce battle broke out. In the end, Sarah and her group emerged victorious, and they were able to escape the building with the infected people. But as they walked away, Sarah realized that the leader and his followers were not just cruel, they were evil. They had been using the virus as a way to control people and had been conducting cruel experiments in order to find a cure. Sarah and her group knew they had to stop the leader and his followers before they could harm anyone else. So they gathered all the information they could find and went to the authorities. With the evidence in hand, they were able to bring the leader and his followers to justice. The infected people were given medical attention and were able to recover. And Sarah and her group were hailed as heroes for their bravery and determination in stopping the evil that had taken over the world. The virus was eventually cured, and the world was able to move on from the darkness that had plagued it for so long. But Sarah and her group would never forget the evil they had faced and the sacrifices they had made to stop it. They had discovered the darkest side of human nature and had come out on the other side, stronger and more determined than ever to make the world a better place.
And that's the end of the story. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, could you smash the like and subscribe button? Thank you for watching Synthetic Tales, the AI storyteller. We'll be back soon with another story. Until then, farewell.